The first thing I noticed about the woman sitting alone at the corner table wasn't the hearing aids. It was the way she was reading the menu, with the focused intensity of someone who had already decided she wasn't going to let this evening waste her time. That should have told me everything I needed to know. I'm 31 years old, which is old enough to recognize when your coworkers are being suspiciously enthusiastic about your love life. My name is Wyatt Brennan. I'm a structural engineer for a mid-size firm in Portland, Oregon, which means I spend most of my time thinking about load-bearing walls and arguing with contractors over email. My social life, according to my friends, is basically a controlled demolition with no rebuild plan. I had gotten out of a long relationship 2 years earlier and spent the time since convincing myself I was fine, which is what people say when they are specifically not fine. My coworker, Paige, had texted me on a Thursday. She'd said, "Dress like you have somewhere to be. Dinner at Fieldstone at 7. You're going to like her." That was it. No last name, no context, no information beyond a restaurant name and a poorly disguised ambush. Fieldstone was the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list that required a flashlight, not somewhere you go alone. I walked in at 6:58, told the host my name, and got shown to a table where a woman was already seated, looking at the menu like it had personally offended her. She had dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless and probably wasn't, and she wore a burgundy blouse and small, discreet hearing aids in both ears. When she looked up, her eyes were brown and sharp and assessing in a way that made me feel like I had already been graded. "You must be Wyatt," she said. Her voice was clear, slightly deliberate in its enunciation, the way some people speak when they've learned to control it carefully. "That's what it says on my badge at work," I said. "Here I'm going in blind." Her mouth curved. "Same." She tilted her head. "They didn't tell you." "They told me your name. Just the name Sloan." I sat down. "They said you were funny." Paige says that about everyone she wants to set up. She said it about me. Sloan looked at me for one beat. "She said you were driven and good with your hands. That's a contractor's resume." "I thought so too." She almost smiled. I counted it as a win. A server appeared, young, cheerful, with the particular energy of someone who sensed social complexity and had decided it was not their problem. I ordered a water and looked back at Sloan, who was watching me with the same careful attention she'd given the menu. "So," I said, "how long have you known Paige?" 4 years. She did the marketing for the nonprofit I work for. She set the menu down. "You?" "We started at the firm the same week. 6 years ago. And she waited 6 years to meddle. She meddled plenty. I was just better at saying no." Sloane's expression shifted slightly, amused and a little knowing. "What changed?" I looked toward the entrance, where, through the frosted glass partition separating the bar from the dining area, I could make out 2 distinct shapes that looked very much like Paige and her husband Derek, pretending to study the cocktail menu. "I got tricked," I said. Sloane followed my gaze. She was quiet for a second. "Then, there are 3 of them." I looked again. She was right. A third shape had materialized beside Paige and Derek. My friend Ross, who had texted me that same week saying we should hang soon, which I now understood was reconnaissance. "Were you told?" I asked. "That you might be difficult?" "Yes." I turned back to her. "I'm not difficult. I'm selective. That's what difficult people say. What do easy people say?" Sloane reached for her water glass. "They don't get set up in secret." That landed. I let it. She was right, and the fact that she'd said it without cruelty made it worse somehow. More accurate. The server came back, and I ordered whatever she recommended because I had lost the ability to process a menu. Sloane ordered the duck without hesitation, which told me something about her. "Can I ask you something?" I said. Something in her posture went slightly careful, braced. "There it is," she said quietly, like she'd been expecting it. That expression, prepared for disappointment, hit me somewhere I hadn't expected. "The hearing aids," I said. "Is it okay if I ask how to talk to you? Like, is there anything that makes it easier? The lighting in here is." Sloane blinked. Then the bracing fell away. "Oh." She looked almost surprised. "Actually, if you can stay facing me, that helps." I lip-read part of the time. Background noise is the bigger issue. She glanced around the restaurant. "This place is medium. Not terrible." "I can talk louder. Please don't." A real smile. "I have hearing aids, not superpowers. Louder just sounds like everyone's yelling." "Got it. Normal volume, face you. Don't mumble. You've done this before." "I haven't," I said. I'm making educated guesses. She studied me for a moment. Those were good guesses. Something shifted in the air between us. Small but there. I excused myself, stood, and walked toward the bar. Paige saw me coming and had the audacity to smile like this was going well. Derek looked at the floor. Ross, to his credit, took a long drink of his beer like it might help. Wyatt, Paige started. You could have told me, I said. You would have overthought it. I'm going to overthink it anyway. Now I'm just doing it in public. Derek raised a hand. For what it's worth, we really do think. You had her come here without warning either, I said, without telling her what I knew, and me without knowing what she knew, and then you all sat 20 feet away to watch. Ross set down his beer. When you say it like that, it's a setup, Ross. It's fine. But you put her in a position where she walked into a room not knowing if I'd be decent. I kept my voice even. She's spent this whole dinner waiting for the moment I'd make her feel like a problem. Nobody said anything. Paige's smile had gone. She's not a test, I said. She's a person. And she's actually, I stopped. She's good. So go home and let me finish dinner. Paige looked past me toward the table. We really are sorry. Tell her that. Later. Not tonight. I walked back. Sloane was looking at me when I sat down. Quiet, readable only around the edges. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know. It wasn't for me, was it? It was a little for you. Her jaw shifted, like she was holding something back. They mean well. Most people who cross lines mean well. She laughed once, short and genuine. That's a terrible bumper sticker. I'll workshop it. She picked up her fork. So, structural engineer. So, nonprofit arts access, she said. We fund programming that makes museums, theaters, performances available to people with disabilities. Captioning, interpretation, audio description, accessible design. I looked at her. That's your job. It's also my life a little. She shrugged, but not dismissively, the kind of shrug that means I know how that sounds and I don't care. I lost most of my hearing in my mid-20s. Meningitis. She said it plainly, not like she was confessing. I can still hear with the aids. Probably always will be able to some degree. But it changed enough that I started caring about who gets left out of things and who doesn't. I thought about the way she'd looked at the door when she'd arrived, scoping out the space. Do you check acoustics before you sit down? Her eyes sharpened. Yes, how did you know? You looked at the ceiling when you came in. She was quiet for a second. I do that automatically now. I don't even notice. A pause. You notice things. I assess structures for a living. It's a hazard. Do I pass structural inspection? I looked at her. Load-bearing, good bones, exceptional sight lines. She laughed again, and this time it took over her face before she could calibrate it. I felt it in my chest like a warning signal. The good kind. We talked through the appetizers and into the main course. She told me about growing up in Boise, moving to Portland for grad school, staying because the city suited her. I told her about my family in Ohio, the sister who sent me unsolicited recipes, the mother who still called every Sunday at 9 a.m., regardless of time zone comprehension. She sounds dedicated, Sloane said. She called me on my birthday once from my grandmother's landline because her cell died. She does not believe in missing check-ins. That's either very sweet or very concerning. In my family, they're the same thing. Sloane's duck arrived, and she approached it with the same focused precision she'd brought to the menu. I had ordered the salmon because the server had recommended it, and I had trusted her completely. Can I ask you something now? Sloane said. You can ask me anything. The relationship you got out of. She looked up. Paige mentioned it, vaguely. I set my fork down. How vague? She said you were with someone for a long time and it ended and you turned into a project. Her word. She means I renovated my apartment. Alone? Compulsively. I looked at my plate. Her name was Diane. We were together for 3 years. She was smart and had good taste in coffee, and we wanted completely different things, which we both knew for about 18 months before either of us said it out loud. I paused. When it ended, I didn't know what to do with the space, so I redid the floors. Did it help? The floors look great. Sloane nodded slowly. I've done that. After my hearing changed, I reorganized my entire apartment. Like if everything had a place, the thing that happened couldn't rearrange anything else. I looked at her. That's exactly what it was. She met my eyes, and for a second, neither of us reached for our wine or looked away. It sat there between us, that recognition, the particular kind that happens when someone describes your interior without having been there. I was also engaged, I said. The words came out quieter than I intended. Before thy name was. I stopped. Actually, it doesn't matter. We were 26. We thought being in love was the same as being ready. We weren't. I exhaled. After that, I got better at protecting myself from situations I might not handle well. And how's that going? Jury's still out, I said. I'm currently at a restaurant under false pretenses talking to a stranger about my flaws and my failed engagements, so. Sloane's smile was slow and warm and slightly dangerous. In your defense, the salmon looks good. It really does. We lingered over dessert neither of us had planned to order. A chocolate thing with a name I couldn't pronounce. Sloane pointed at it on the menu and raised an eyebrow, and I said yes without reading the description, which felt like a personality test I had just passed. Outside, the November air had gone cold and clear. The street was lit up in that particular way Portland gets in fall. Wet pavement, amber streetlights, the smell of rain that had already passed through. Sloane had driven. I'd taken a rideshare. She told me her car was 2 blocks east, and I said I'd walk with her because the night wasn't over yet. And she looked at me for a second with an expression I couldn't fully read before saying, "Okay." We walked slowly, not because we had to, because neither of us was in a hurry. She told me about the worst date she'd been on since her hearing changed. A man who had spent the whole evening talking louder and louder, increasingly frustrated when she asked him to repeat things, until he'd finally said, "Maybe we should text," and pulled out his phone. "At the table," she said, "while you were sitting across from him, while I was sitting across from him." I thought about what to say. "I'm sorry that happened. I've made peace with it," she said. "Now it's just a story I tell to see how people react." I glanced at her. "How am I doing?" "You look angry on my behalf, which I appreciate. And you're not overcompensating, which I appreciate more. I'm a man of moderate reactions. You confronted 3 people at a bar 2 hours ago. Moderate reactions to things that matter." She was quiet for a moment. Her footsteps were even, unhurried. "Wyatt? Yeah. Why did you stay?" I thought about it. Not because I didn't know, but because I wanted to say it right. "Because you were interesting before the duck arrived," I said. "And I was curious what you were going to be like by dessert." Her breath came out slow. "That's a very engineering answer. I assess things in stages. What stage are we on?" I looked at the wet sidewalk ahead of us. "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." She didn't say anything to that, but she didn't look away either. Her car was a gray Subaru parked neatly at the curb, which told me she had arrived with enough time to find a real spot, which told me she had been nervous, which for reasons I couldn't entirely explain made me feel better about my own evening. "Text me when you get home," she said, and then looked immediately like she regretted the casualness of it. "Is that usually your line?" I stole it from someone who was going to say it first. I was going to say it. I know. She was already unlocking her car. I stood close enough to be present, far enough not to crowd her. When she looked up, there was something in her face that was softer than amusement and more careful than warmth. Not armored, exactly. Just not sure yet. "Saturday," she said. I waited. "There's an exhibition opening at the Art Museum. Accessible design installations. My organization helped fund it." She looked at me. "I get 2 passes. That sounds like an invitation. It is 1. Then yes." Her mouth did the thing again, the smile that happened before she decided whether to let it. "Okay." She drove away. I stood on the sidewalk until her taillights turned the corner, which was probably longer than was reasonable, and then I walked 2 blocks to where my rideshare app told me a Camry was waiting. I texted her from the back seat. "Me, home. No one was harmed in the getting here." 3 minutes later, "Sloane, proud of you." The bar was low. Me, it almost always is. "Sloane, Saturday. Museum opens at 10. Don't be late or I'll start without you." Me, you'd do that. "Sloane, I absolutely would." "Good night, Wyatt." I read it twice, possibly 3 times. Saturday came, and the exhibition was everything she said and more. Sculptural installations built to make you feel the gap between designed space and accessible space. A door handle placed at the wrong height. A staircase with no alternative. A room where the acoustics had been deliberately distorted so you could feel what Sloane described as the noise problem. We stood in that room longer than anywhere else. "This is it," she said quietly. This is every restaurant I've ever sat in where the background music was too loud, and I had to decide between asking someone to repeat themselves for the fourth time or just nodding and hoping for the best. I stood beside her and said nothing for a moment. Then, how often do you choose nodding? More than I should, and with me tonight. She looked up. I haven't nodded once. I took that with me. After the exhibition, we went to a diner because she said museum food was a moral compromise, and I agreed without knowing enough about it to disagree. She got eggs and toast at 11 in the morning, like someone who had decided breakfast was a philosophy and not a time slot. I ordered a burger because I had learned not to fight my instincts. Can I ask you something? I said. You can always ask. Do you date a lot? She considered this. I go on dates. Whether I call them, that depends on how they go. She folded a piece of toast in half. After my hearing changed, there was a period where I didn't date at all. Not because I didn't want to, but because every time I did, I had to decide how early to tell someone and how they'd react, and whether they'd treat it like a plot twist or just a thing, I said. She looked at me. It's just a thing, I said. It's yours. But it's not. I tried to find the right word. It doesn't change the weight of you. She went very still. Then she picked up her coffee cup and looked at it for a second. That might be the best thing anyone's ever said to me on a second date. I contain multitudes. You contain a burger at 11 a.m. and multitudes. She smiled into her coffee. And under the table, her foot bumped mine once, lightly, and she didn't move it away. Our third time seeing each other wasn't a date, technically. She'd texted me on a Wednesday. Sloan, you know anything about ADA compliance for historic buildings? Me, embarrassingly much. Why? Sloan, we're applying for a grant to retrofit an 1890s theater. The architect we hired keeps saying things are structurally impossible, and I'm starting to think he means inconvenient. Me, send me what you have. She sent me 14 pages of plans. I spent an hour and a half going through them and found 3 solutions the architect had either missed or declined to look for. I sent them back with notes. 20 minutes later, Sloan, I'm going to need you to come look at this building. Me? When? Sloan? Now? I went. The theater was a beautiful wreck on the east side of the river. Ornate plasterwork, terrible ventilation, a floor plan that hadn't been updated since Eisenhower. We walked through it with her colleague, a soft-spoken guy named Tomas, who kept saying, historically significant, whenever I pointed at something problematic. Sloan walked beside me with a notepad, asking questions that cut straight to the function of things. Not what's wrong with this, but what would fix it. She thought in solutions, which is not as common as it should be. At some point, Tomas went to make a phone call, and we were standing alone in the theater's old lobby, dust in the light through tall windows, the smell of old wood, and something faintly chemical. You didn't have to come, she said. You asked. I know, but... She looked up at the plasterwork ceiling. I didn't mean to make you feel obligated. I don't feel obligated. I turned toward her. I wanted to see the building, and I wanted to see you. She looked at me sideways. You could have said that. I'm saying it now. The silence in the old theater was different from other silences. Held and still. Outside, I could hear the city moving, but in here everything was patient. Wyatt, she said. Yeah, I need to tell you something. There was something in her voice that made me go quiet. Not afraid, exactly. Careful. I was in a relationship for 2 years, she said. It ended 8 months ago. She kept her eyes on the ceiling. His name was Patrick. He was kind at first and attentive. He learned some sign language which I don't even primarily use, but the gesture mattered. She paused. For about a year it was good. And then it changed. I waited. Not violently, she said quickly. Nothing like that. He just started managing me, deciding which events were too loud before I could decide for myself, calling ahead to restaurants without asking, answering for me in conversations I was fully participating in. Her jaw tightened slightly. He thought he was helping. I think he genuinely believed that. But what it actually was, she stopped. It was like he'd decided who I should be now, and the person he'd decided on was smaller than me. My chest tightened. I don't need someone to translate the world for me, she said, and her voice was careful and clear and meant every syllable. I need someone who understands that I'm already navigating it. I know, I said. She finally looked at me. You say that. But it's different when it's inconvenient. I know that too. She studied my face. Patrick said he knew, too. I'm not going to tell you I'm different. I turned toward her fully. I'll probably get things wrong. I might offer to help when you didn't ask. I might not understand the right thing to do in a situation that's new to me. I held her gaze. But I'm asking you to tell me when I do. Not manage it for me. Not assume I'm like him. Just tell me. That's all I'm asking for. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "That's fair." And the space between us changed in the way that spaces do when something true has been said in them. Tomas came back with coffee from a place around the corner which broke the moment in the best possible way. We drank bad coffee in the lobby of a crumbling theater and argued pleasantly about load paths and access ramps until it was past 6, and we'd somehow been there for 4 hours. Outside on the sidewalk, she looked at me and said, "Dinner?" Just like that. "Yes," I said, "just like that." We found a Mexican place 2 blocks away with good lighting and manageable noise, and a corner booth that Sloane claimed immediately, positioning herself so she could see the room. I sat across from her and didn't point it out, and she noticed that I didn't point it out, and something in her shoulders released by a fraction. Over tacos, she told me about her sister back in Boise, who called every Saturday and pretended not to be checking on her. I told her about my brother Kevin, and stopped immediately, because Kevin was in the name file, and I'd slipped, mentally corrected. My brother Colt, who had once tried to fix a leaking pipe in his kitchen and accidentally flooded his basement and called me for engineering advice at 2 in the morning. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "That engineers design buildings, not plumbing, and he should call a plumber. Did he?" "No. He watched 4 YouTube videos and made it worse." Sloane laughed. The laugh I was starting to think about between conversations. Unguarded, quick, taking over her face. "My sister does the same thing," she said. "She once repainted her own bathroom based on a tutorial and called me when she realized she'd done it in the wrong order." "What's the wrong order?" "Painting the trim before the walls, apparently. That's deeply wrong. She's a very confident woman." "Confidence," I said, "is not the same as competence. Are you competent?" "At most things." Her eyes held mine. "Which things aren't you?" I thought about it, actually thought about it. "Parallel parking," I said, "and letting things end before I've decided they need to." Her expression shifted, something softer catching in it. "The second one is an interesting thing to admit. I'm practicing honesty. With me specifically? With me in general." I looked at her. "You're making it easier." She looked down at her plate for a second. When she looked back up, her eyes were warmer. "I'm going to a fundraiser gala next Friday," she said, "for the organization. It's formal, it's long, and the keynote speaker always goes 20 minutes over. But the food is good and I get a +1. Is that an invitation? It's a warning followed by an invitation." "I have a suit," I said. "It's been in a garment bag since my cousin's wedding, but it still fits." "You don't know that. I'm optimistic." "About the suit or about Friday?" I looked at her across the taco wrappers and the empty chips basket and the comfortable ruins of a $4 guacamole. "Both," I said. She smiled. And this time she let it stay. The gala was at a downtown hotel ballroom, and the keynote did go 23 minutes over. And Sloane's expression when she glanced at me at the 20-minute mark was one of the funniest things I had ever silently witnessed. I mouthed 3 more minutes, and she mouthed back, "You don't know that," and then we both looked forward again like we weren't doing it. Afterward, during the networking portion that Sloane navigated with professional ease and occasional strategic retreats to quieter corners, I watched her work. She knew everyone, and everyone knew her, not in a surface way, but the way you know someone who has made actual things happen. She introduced me to 3 board members, a city council liaison, and a woman named Greta who had designed the exhibition we'd seen at the museum and who shook my hand like she already knew something about me. "She seems important," I said when Greta moved on. "She's the reason we got our last 2 grants." Sloane watched Greta cross the room. "Also, she told me, before you got here, that I'd seemed lighter lately." I said nothing. "I told her it was the new vitamin D supplement I'd been taking," she said. And she didn't believe me. I held my glass and tried not to look like I was feeling things. I failed, because Sloane glanced at me and said, quietly, "I know." The drive home after she offered me a ride was easy and quiet in the way that evenings sometimes go when something has settled between 2 people without being said directly, yet. The city moved around us. She had a playlist going, something instrumental and unhurried. At a red light, she reached over and turned it down. Patrick came by my apartment last week, she said. I kept my hands folded in my lap. Okay, he wants to talk. He says he's been thinking about things. She kept her eyes on the light. He says he knows he got it wrong. The light turned green. She drove. What do you want? I asked. I already know what I want, she said. I wanted to tell you, because I didn't want you to hear it some other way and wonder. I looked at her profile against the passing streetlights. Do you need to meet him? No. Immediate. No hesitation. I just needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't my sister. I'm glad you said it to me. Me too, she exhaled. He's not a bad person, Wyatt. He just loved me in a way that required me to be less. And I don't want to be less. You're not less, I said. You've never been less. She was quiet for a block. Then, I know. But it took me a while to believe it again. She pulled up outside my apartment building. The engine idled. Neither of us got out or said goodbye. Wyatt? Yeah. I like you, she said. Like it was a fact she had finished confirming and was now reporting. I've been thinking about it and I like you. And I wanted to say it before I talked myself into a more cautious version. I turned toward her. I like you too. I know, she said. You came to look at a decrepit theater on 40 minutes' notice. It had good bones. The building? I looked at her. Sure. Her mouth curved into something that was still managing to be a smile, even though her eyes had gone serious. She reached across the console and took my hand, the same way she had that night in the diner when her foot had bumped mine, not asking permission, just choosing. Like it was already decided, and she was catching up the gesture to the fact. I'm going to need you to be patient with me, she said quietly. I don't move fast and I don't say things I don't mean, and I will absolutely tell you when something's wrong, which Patrick said he wanted, and then didn't. Actually. Want. I want it, I said. Actually. And I need you to let me navigate my own life. I know. You'll get things wrong sometimes. I will. And you'll have to let me get things wrong sometimes too. Without fixing it. That one might be harder, I admitted. I'm structurally inclined. She laughed, and the laugh cracked the last of the tension in the car, and everything beneath it went warm and certain. I bent toward her. She met me halfway. The kiss was slow and deliberate, her fingers tightening on mine, and it lasted long enough that when we broke apart, we were both slightly breathless, and the windows had fogged at the edges. Go inside, she said, still close, before I rethink being patient. I got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk and watched her pull away. Somewhere between the third traffic light and my front door, I understood, quietly and without ceremony, that I was in serious trouble. The good kind. She texted from her apartment 30 minutes later. Sloan, home, no catastrophes. Me, disappointed. Sloan, you wanted catastrophes? Me, I wanted an excuse to drive across the city at midnight. Sloan, that's very dramatic for an engineer. Me, I contain multitudes. Sloan, you contain a garment bag suit and a lot of feelings. Me, fair. Sloan, good night, Wyatt. Me. Good night, Sloan. 2 weeks later, things between us had settled into the kind of rhythm that feels both new and inevitable. Texts in the morning, long phone calls she took with her earpiece in, evenings that started with a plan and ended much later than intended. She met my friend Ross at a brewery downtown and spent 20 minutes interrogating him about what, exactly, he had said to Paige that led to the setup. Ross, to his credit, came clean about everything. He told Paige you needed someone equally stubborn. Sloan reported afterward. That's an endorsement? He said it like it was, and? She looked at me. He's not wrong. Paige and Derek had apologized to her, properly, in person, over dinner they paid for. Sloan had listened, asked 2 sharp questions, and then accepted it in the way she did everything, directly. Without performance, without making it larger than it needed to be. On the walk back to her car, she'd said they love you badly sometimes. And I'd said, yeah. And she'd said, that's better than not at all. And I'd thought about that for days. She did meet Patrick, not because she owed him anything, she was clear about that, but because she wanted to for herself, to say the things she needed to say in person, and then close the door on her own terms. I drove her, I didn't go in. She chose the coffee place. She'd looked it up for accessibility first. I knew she had, because she mentioned it without looking at me, the way people mention things they've done that they're privately satisfied about. Inside, I sat at a table by the window with a mediocre latte and a clear view of where she was sitting, with a man who looked like the kind of person who believed good intentions absolved bad behavior. He was talking. She was listening with a stillness that I recognized as her version of patience wearing thin. At some point, he reached across the table. She moved her hand. 32 minutes later, she came out. I stood. She walked to me and her face was settled and clear, the way a room looks after the furniture has finally been rearranged correctly. Okay? I asked. Done, she said. Did you say everything? Everything that mattered. She looked back once at the coffee shop. He apologized. I believed him. That doesn't mean he gets anything back, it just means I'm done carrying it. I held out my hand. She took it. Outside, the sun had broken through the gray, and the streets were that particular Portland silver, washed and bright. She stopped at the corner and breathed. I want pancakes, she said. Right now? Right now. The place on Burnside. They have the sourdough ones. It's 2 in the afternoon. Pancakes don't have a shift. We went for pancakes. I watched her eat the sourdough stack with the focused satisfaction of someone who had earned a meal, and I thought, I am going to tell her. Not because of Patrick, not to compete with anything, but because it was true and I was tired of holding it at a careful distance. I set down my coffee. Sloan. She looked up. I know this is still new, I said, and I'm not asking for anything back right now. But I need to say it because I've been thinking about it, and the longer I don't say it, the more it's going to start feeling like a thing I'm hiding. I exhaled. I'm falling in love with you. She went very still. Not frozen, still, the kind of stillness that means everything is happening inside. Not because of what you've survived, I said. Not because you're impressive, even though you are. Because of the way you think. Because of how you fight for things. Because you told me to let you get things wrong, and I understood exactly what you meant, and I want to try. I looked at her. That's it. That's all I've got. She looked at me for a long moment across the table. Her hands were wrapped around her mug. Then she said, very quietly, I'm already there. I exhaled. I've been there for a while, she said. I was waiting until it felt safe to say, does it? She smiled, the full one, the one she couldn't manage before she decided to let it. Yeah, she said. It does. I reached across the table and took her hand. She held it. Outside, the city moved past the diner windows, people and traffic, and the ordinary machinery of a Saturday afternoon. And inside, in a booth by the window, 2 people who had both been careful for too long were choosing, together, to be less careful. Not reckless. Just willing. 7 months later, Paige gave a toast at our apartment warming. Our apartment, the one we found in the inner southeast, with an open floor plan and wide doorways and good acoustics and exactly enough wall space for the print Sloan had bought at a gallery opening the month after we met. She'd said it reminded her of something she couldn't name yet. It was hanging in the hallway where she passed it every morning. Derek helped with the heavy furniture. Ross brought beer and accidental send an IKEA shelf, upside down, which Sloan documented photographically and threatened to send to his employer. Paige cried twice, which she attributed to allergies, and everyone accepted without comment. In Paige's toast, she said, I have known Wyatt for 6 years, and I have watched him be careful about everything except the things that mattered. So I decided to stop letting him be careful. And then she looked at Sloan and said, I'm sorry I didn't tell you both. I'm not sorry it worked. And Sloan had looked at me, and I had looked back, and neither of us disagreed. After everyone left, we stood in the kitchen doing the dishes together, the apartment settling around us into quiet, her playlist on the speaker. City noise through the window, the low light of a Sunday evening. You happy? She asked. I looked at her, at this woman who had walked into a setup and turned it into something unassailable, who had told me exactly who she was on the second date and let me decide what to do with it, who had said, tell me when you get it wrong and meant it, and said, let me get it wrong too and meant that, and had not once asked me to manage her life or carry her history or be careful of her in the way that means small. Yeah, I said, I am. She handed me a dish. Good. She glanced sideways at me. Because you live here now, and the sourdough pancake place is 6 blocks away, and I found a theater in Northeast that needs an accessibility retrofit. Is that a professional referral or a reason to keep me around? She considered this. Both. I laughed, and she laughed. And the dishes got done slowly, because neither of us was in a hurry. Later, when the apartment was quiet, and the city had gone dark outside the windows, she was reading on the couch, and I was sitting beside her not reading, just being there in the particular way that feels like the point of everything. She reached over without looking up from her book and put her hand in mine. That was all. Her hand in mine, in a room we'd made ours, in a life we were still building. I thought about the night I had walked into Fieldstone, not knowing what I was walking toward, and the woman at the corner table who had already been there, already assessing, already choosing whether or not this was worth her time. I was glad she decided it was. And every day since, I've been trying to be worth the deciding.